we'll move on to agenda item number 6B, Drafting Committee Report, Commissioner Dave McNinch.
Mr. Chairman, our last committee meeting was in Las Vegas, April 5th. It was well attended, I think would be probably an understatement. We had in excess of 100 people from the public attend. We ran the meeting for 9 hours and 15 minutes, had to cut it short, and didn't really come to any conclusions. The committee largely was overwhelmed with public comment. We had a significant number of folks that wanted to get up and comment on each action item. We had brought forward a number of items at the request of the committee and at the request of the public. And the bottom line is that we just didn't get through them all. And I think when we all left, this would include the public, there were a lot of empty feelings and a lot of, there's certainly a lot of angst, a lot of frustration. Those frustrations and anxieties have been relayed to us in a number of emails subsequent to the meeting. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of ways to avoid it. There was a need to evaluate things that were being brought to the table. I think what we've taken out of it largely is that a lot of the things like education components, non-target data, while they have a place in the discussion somewhere, they certainly are weighing our ability to move through our mandate and our edict through SB 213. It certainly has complicated it and caused a lot of issues with regards to moving forward to some conclusion at some point. So I think it's safe to say that while there was a lot of public comment, personally, and I think I can speak on behalf of the committee, there's not a lot of new ideas hitting the ground from the public. The tone of the comments that are being made has changed. At one point, I think that there was, the comments coming back had some usefulness in the sense that maybe it added to opportunities or things that we might be able to consider. Largely, the public comments have I got to be careful here because I don't want to discount public comment, but I think the bottom line is that people are sharing personal experiences and trying to relate those back to our agenda items. And while there's a place for that, I think the ideas is what I'm trying to say, coming from the public are far and few between at this point. So what we're going to do as we move forward here, the committee is going to conduct another meeting on May 29th, and we'll start mid to late morning, and it will be held in Reno. It will not be video conferenced, and I think Patrick is going to speak to some of that. Where'd Patrick go? Okay, there he is. At some point today, and the process, and I'm going to ask Rich to, so that we don't do to Rich what Jack just did to Tony. Help come up and explain some of the process that we need to go through here. If there's gonna be some kind of action that comes from the committee and or the commission, if there are changes to trapping and requirements, restrictions, etc., and we want those to move forward for the next trapping season, we need to have things completed at the August commission meeting, whether that's on the 15th or the 8th. It's another agenda item that we have here. So with that, basically what would come out of the committee on the 29th, if anything moves forward from the committee, it would largely be presented as an LCB, be presented to LCB as coming out of the committee. The intent, I believe, and I'm putting Jack on the spot a little bit here, would be to workshop that in conjunction with the Tonopah meeting. And it wouldn't be a workshop with regards to what we need to do to finalize the final LCB version and officially recognize anything that moves forward as a Nevada Administrative Code, but it would be more of an opportunity to present and get that final input on what's being proposed. So I don't know if I clarified that enough, Rich, or not. Okay. I know it probably prompts some questions, it possibly does. So the intent is to conduct one more meeting with regards to the mandate from SB Senate Bill 213. There's certainly a number of other issues, another number of other items that probably warrant further discussion or further review, consideration. But at this point in time, I think the focus, we're going to get real focused, and we're going to push forward with one more committee meeting and see if we can come up with something that we can do with decisions. That's the bottom line. So I don't know if anybody had any questions or if any of the committee members had any additional comments.
Commissioner Lane?
I have to say that I think that we've really got to look at the agendas of these meetings, because I got so many complaints from people about the length of the meeting and the fact that the agenda item that they wanted to hear was at the very end of the meeting. And I think some of those agenda items were, very pertinent to the trappers who were there, but for the, the demerit issues, but for everyone else there, they were totally lost. So I have to say that I am very frustrated right now with this process, because I clearly don't believe that we certainly, we seem to be so polarized that we aren't, we as a commission don't seem to be able to move forward, and that's very disconcerting to me.
And I share those frustrations. I will say that a number of those items that were on that agenda came directly from the committee, recommendations from the committee, direction from the committee, and that's why I've had those potential agenda items on there. So the things that have been on the agenda have been in response and out of recognition for committee and to some extent the public wanting to have a conversation on certain things. In a 9-hour and 15-minute meeting, one or two of the items at the end were not considered, and I think that we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.5 hours of public comment. So, I think it's pretty obvious that the struggle is working our way through that process. The public process that we're expected and must comply with, and maybe there's some clarifications. I was talking with department staff earlier on what we can and cannot, and how we might be able to manage that a little bit better. But 7 to 7.5 hours worth of public comment in a 9-hour meeting is brutal for everybody. It's tough on the audience, it's tough on the committee, and I would agree, it is crippling, and it is difficult to move through. But I will. Those agendas have largely been set with the committee's comments and requests.
I have a question, Dave. Are you able to limit the length of the comments or shorten it up? Because to me, I've seen a person, it's the same people saying the same thing over and over. How many times do you got to listen to on both sides of the issue? Could you cut it down to 30 seconds or a minute instead of 9.5 hours? That's a ridiculous. That's way too long for a meeting. And I've run a lot of meetings in my life. That's just too long for one meeting.
And we've had longer ones. That's the worst part. But the answer is we're not 100% sure what our we got to be very careful. I mean, it's an incredibly sensitive. I mean, it's a very powerful law, and there's a reason for it.
Well, I certainly get that, but we have a commission here. We're able to make a decision based on hearing comment. It doesn't take the same people droning over and over. Yeah. That's why the governor appointed us to this, to make a decision.
Agreed. And I think the reason why this was at the committee level was to go through that process, as frustrating it is to reach an end point, to reach a point where we can turn that table, and I think we're there. It's just unfortunate that it takes meetings like the one we had down there to get to that point. So I think that it's largely been vetted. The issues are on the table, and it's my full intent to bring some options to the committee at the next meeting and see if we can work through, and it's gonna run the gamut, nothing to, well, fireworks and a couple things in between, and see if we can move things off center.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because it was and I would like to hear a clear answer on this, because it was my understanding that reducing the 96 hours statewide is off the table. And I'm not sure, when that decision was made, it sounded like because of something that the DAG said that was off, but the more I look at this issue and the more testimony I hear, and looking at some of the 1981 legislative action, which reduced the trapping season, or the trapping visitation time from 1 week to 96 hours, there was a lot that went on in the session, and we haven't been given that information, and I think some of that's very pertinent, but it just seems to me that I guess that's my question to you right now.
And Commissioner Lane, I think it's, we're getting into the deliberations on it. This was intended to be a report, but at a previous meeting, we did have our DAG notify us in the public meeting that the 96 hours from a statewide standpoint was not necessarily on the table. I mean, that's how he phrased it. He put on there that Jeremy, maybe you can help me out here how it was exactly phrased, but.
I think, Dave, it was more in the way it was agendized. When we had the meetings in Reno and Elko and Las Vegas, we kind of limited the conversation to the wildlife management units in each of those regions. And I think that's what he was saying in terms of it being off the table for action at that meeting, because we were specifically addressing those areas.
It's not completely off the table with regards to an administrative code, or it's certainly going to NRS, but I think that he definitely restricted our conversation, and Jeremy, I think you're right, it had to do with the way we agendized the thing. And we did take action at that meeting. The committee did take action to not lower or increase the visitation frequency by lowering 96 hours to some other number. They left it at 96 from the standpoint of areas outside of kind of the Washoe County with the Reno Sparks area and the Las Vegas area. So those will all be, there'll be more clarification as we move forward here. The information that's going to go out as part of this committee meeting will be quite a bit more clear on what's on the table and the decisions that have already been made and where we're going from there. Any other questions? Comments?
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 6C, Bear Committee Report, Commissioner McNinch.
Okay, thank you. As if trapping wasn't enough, we're still working on our bear, doing our 3-year review as requested by the legislature. And the bottom line is that we cannot juggle. My staff has their hands full staffing these. The department has trouble staffing these committees as they are. And when we're going 8, 9, 10 hours on a committee meeting, we're asking, just to be quite blunt about it, we're just asking the department for too much. It takes a tremendous amount of time for them to do these things and to staff us and to help us move forward with these things. And we were trying to keep all the balls in the air. And as a result, our last agenda for the Bear Committee meeting was challenged. There were some challenges to it. And rather than expose ourselves to a potential public meeting law violation or complaint, we decided to cancel the meeting. And that's what we're down to. The public the public is using the open meeting law as a mechanism. The irony is that the law is in place to provide an wide open forum for discussion. And in my personal opinion, I'm finding that the public is largely using it as a mechanism to stop the process from occurring. And I think it's a real irony, and I think it's a real shame. And So basically, when we get within 3 days of our meeting, after we have to provide proper notice, we have to have a 3-day proper notice. And every time we get within that 3-day notice, the emails start flying about the posting violations that are perceived or that people are looking in at on our agendas. So that gives us no time to make corrections and be honorable about the process. And that is exactly what happened with the Bear Committee. So that meeting was canceled, and we're gonna keep it off the table until we get our trapping stuff done and coordinate with chairman of the commission once we get through that point, get those issues resolved and make sure we coordinate with the department and make sure that we're able to move forward and provide the time and the energy so that we can all move forward without fear of being challenged in those respects. So yeah, I'll say it again. It's real frustrating to see staff put the time and effort into these agendas in coordination with the chairman of these committees, knowing that within 3 days of the meeting, they're likely going to be hearing challenges. And it's always in the name of, hey, we're just looking and making sure everything's done properly, but that can be done prior to that 3 days, so we can get it straightened out, get an amended agenda and move forward. It's obstructionism and obstructionist attitude, and we don't have time for it. It's a waste of everybody's time, and it's a waste of everybody's energy, and we need to be a little more honorable about how we move forward. So, so that's my report. A little bit whiny, but that's how it is today.
Any questions on the Bear report at this time? Okay, before we move on to agenda item 6D, it is 12:05. Let's take a recess and come back at 1 o'clock.